Hello and welcome to the third installment of my model railroad. As you can see, I've gotten a few more pieces of rolling stock dug up from my old stash here, and an old Amtrak caboose, a simple box car that I actually was able to fit the new Bachmann couplers to because it had the right interface there at the bottom. A lot of the other pieces of rolling stock, instead of having a slip where I can actually just put in the new coupler, they have this little screw, so I need to get a jeweler's set in order to undo that screw, and maybe a washer to hold it in place, because the newer couplers have a very large large hole opening. I don't know, maybe you call it a bail, I'm not sure what's the name for that part of the coupler, but does not fit with a lot of my existing rolling stock. And the ironic part is it actually doesn't. Most of my existing rolling stock that is Bachmann, it does not fit. It will fit on some of these other cheaper brands like Model Power or Tyco. So anyway, the main problem that I've been having for derailment, I'm still having that issue even with this new rolling stock. One thing I did do was go out and order a go-no-go gauge for HO scale from the NMRA website, which I highly recommend. At least it seems like it would be good to check my track, since I know my Bachmann Easy Track might not be the best quality. So I'm not going to go through every single thing, but let's just do a quick check of some of my items here to see if they're within spec. The first thing to do is to check the flange ways with the very top of the gauge here, and you call labeled appropriately flange ways. There are these two little tabs right here, and what you're supposed to do is feed the one tab, let's see if I can get the right angle here, into the slot in between the guide and the outside rail, and apply a little bit of pressure in the direction of the outside rail, kind of where I'm pointing here, and then trace backwards, and the tab of the gauge in the frog should slide through easily, and as you can see, it does. I have the appropriate gap in there. And now let's just check the other side of this rail. Same thing, applying pressure towards the outside rail in between the guard and the outside rail, and you can see that it slides perfectly easily through the frog. Next, let's check the points. A similar operation. Turn the gauge over on the side here and check for the area marked points here. And you do the same thing to check the point rails. So, and once again, this might be a little hard to see. My focus here is not great, but you apply a little bit of pressure in the direction of the point rails. See if I can get it in focus. And you can see here that with a little bit of pressure, the gauge drops in easily, so they're gapped correctly. And now let's manually throw the switch and look again at the same instance on the other side. And that fits in there nicely. The final thing would be for the lead up of the actual rails themselves. You're able to use the part of the gauge down here at the bottom. It's a little hard to see, it says track. So you can see there's one little outside knob on the left, and this one on the right is this little step. And what's supposed to happen is when you apply pressure on the outside of the left tab, the track should sit right on that little ledge on the right tab. So let's see if I can get this in focus here. So as you can see here, I'm applying a slight bit of pressure, towards the top of the picture, and the track sits right on that little ledge. The bottom rail does that is, and that means that my track is gapped correctly. So that's all a good sign. The next thing to do, since this is a car I've been having a lot of trouble with, is to check the wheels on my rolling stock. I know it's going to be a little hard to see because everything's so dark, but there's two ways to check the wheels. First is to check the flange spacing using this part of the gauge right here titled wheels. Use that to check the flanges of the wheels, and I know it's a little hard to see, but trust me, I did it before. They all spec out. The next is the width of the wheel, this little area here called no-go. And what you need to try to do is align you're basically trying to fit the wheel into the no-go area, and it shouldn't go. Sometimes the flange depth is a little such that it's hard to see whether or not it's going into or not. If it's not going into the gauge, it's because the flange is in the way, or if the wheel is the appropriate size. But just to give you an idea, feed it over the wheel here, and I know it's a little hard to see, But you can see there that the wheel does not actually go into the gauge, which means that this car specs out. And I've already checked all the wheels on this car, and I've checked out this car as well. You know, I've been having derailment problems with this car already from my 2 previous videos. So just even in an unpowered situation, I just want to, you know, once again reiterate the problem I've been having. This problem is really what's keeping me from expanding my layout, that and lack of free time at the moment. Let's see if I can't get them coupled. Their couplers are a little bit temperamental, especially as we know from my previous experiences with this passenger car. Try to turn it around. Okay, the cars are coupled together. Now, I have been not having any problems with any of my trains, and they're running straight through the turnout. Absolutely no issues. But when going through the turnout in the turnout direction, that's when I get most of my problems, and I'm going to try to zoom in here on the point rails, which seems to be the biggest problem. They don't want to stay coupled. Alright, let's try a different car. Let's try this smaller caboose. If I can replicate the problem with this smaller caboose. Okay, now right there, what happened is, as I pulled the train through the turnout, this wheel truck here skipped over the point rail and continued on straight. Now I know it's not an ideal situation where I'm pulling it, but that's the only way I can slow down the video enough to really verify what's going on. See if I can get it a little bit slower. So you can see right there, the flange on the first wheel is already in between the point rail and the outside rail. And the car has just entered the turnout. You can see it clearly right there. And if I continue pulling, you know, just a slight pressure on the forward car, you can see the wheels jump right off the point rails, and then the train will derail. Now, once again, my main concern here is, you know, is this a problem with my track or a problem with my rolling stock? That was the main reason for me wanting to get this gauge. I know older rolling stock can be used for, you know, years and years and years, and if I need to replace the wheel trucks on the on some of my older items, that's fine. I have no problem doing that. I know that metal wheels definitely work better. Here in my newer caboose, my newer rolling stock, I have not yet had any problems with this piece. But the only piece that I was able to successfully hook the new Easy Mate coupler to was this caboose, this box car, and this car I have been having a lot of problems with. So, still very few flawless runs around the old oval here. Like I said, I would very much like to expand. I've already chosen my layout to be to have 2 running trains, some sidings, and some switchings, but it will require the primary inner loop to be running through the turnout in the turned out direction in order to just have a continuous running train. I'm just very concerned at this point that I'm going to be investing, another couple $100 on, basically doubling the amount of track that I have and not being able to successfully run a train. If I need to go and buy all brand new rolling stock or replace the wheel trucks on the rolling stock, so be it. I just don't want to invest too much money and then still be having the same problem. I've already had the blunder with the Atlas True Track, and my problems haven't gone away by switching to the Bachmann Easy Track just yet. Once again, please, I welcome any constructive criticism. I have seen one to make sure that my rails and my rolling stock wheels are properly cleaned. I have double-checked them. They appear to be, pretty clean and free of debris. One thing I have noticed is a lot of the rolling stock, when you spin the wheels, they don't spin freely. There's a decent amount of wobble, which makes me think that the axles on the wheel truck here is a little bit off-center. I know it's not going to be perfect. We're dealing with, some off-brand rolling stock and some, things that certainly have not aged too well. But basically, my goal was to try to use my existing rolling stock and my existing DC engines, and then, really make the big investment on the trains themselves when I go to DCC. I know I'll have to be changing the turnouts here as well. In the interim, my go-ahead plan is to buy a jeweler's filing kit and maybe file a little bit away on the inside of this outer rail here so that the point rail can snug up against there just a little bit tighter. And then also the top of the point rail seems to stick up just a little bit too high. It's hard to get a good angle on it, but I just want to maybe try filing down just the very, very tips of the rails. I'll still have to read some more forums online to see if that is a worthwhile approach or if that's going to make my problem worse. But I have read that, just some slight alterations to a turnout can be a big improvement on their overall performance. So once again, thanks for watching. I hope to be working on my layout some more soon. About 2 or 3 weeks behind schedule. And like I said, please, any constructive criticism, thank you very much. And thanks for watching. Bye.